The galaxy's greatest miscalculation. The galaxy was old, vast, and cruel. Countless species lived and died under silent stars. Power decided worth, and strength decided survival. Among the ruling civilizations was the Valith Union, an ancient alien race known for logic and order. They believed emotion was weakness, mercy was waste, and restraint was failure. For thousands of cycles, their worlds stood untouched, protected by fleets and laws older than most stars. One of those worlds was Karos Prime, a bright planet of glass towers and cold oceans. It was home to billions, and to a Valith observer named Sevrak, whose duty was to record history. Sevrak watched the sky change color on the day everything ended. The warning came too late. A rival empire breached the system without mercy. No demands, no negotiations, no limits. Orbital weapons burned cities in seconds. Defense shields failed under endless fire. Whole continents went dark as energy grids collapsed. Sevrak felt something unfamiliar. Fear. The Valith had studied fear, but never felt it. Now it lived inside him, heavy and sharp. He watched evacuation ships explode before reaching orbit. He watched the oceans boil near the impact zones. He watched the Union fleets retreat to protect other core worlds. Karos Prime was marked as expendable. That knowledge hurt more than the destruction. The Union had chosen survival over loyalty, logic over life. As the planet burned, Sevrak fled underground with thousands of others. Food ran out quickly, power faded, the air grew thin. Weeks passed in darkness. The invaders left once nothing of value remained, not even bodies. When Sevrak finally emerged, the world was dead. Ash covered the land like snow. The sky was empty, silent. He recorded everything, as he was trained to do, but his data logs were no longer clean and calm. They were filled with loss, error messages, and gaps where cities once stood. The Valith Union never returned. They sent condolences, then silence. Sevrak understood the truth then. In the galaxy, weakness was not forgiven. It was erased, with no world left. Survivors scattered among neutral systems. Refugees with no flag, no protection, and no value. Sevrak joined a drifting archive station near the edge of explored space. There, he studied records of other fallen worlds. Species erased in wars no one remembered. Patterns emerged. The strong ruled, the weak vanished. While sorting through new data, Sevrak found a strange entry. A recently contacted species from a small blue planet, classified as low threat. Immusendriven technologically behind. The file was short, almost ignored. The species was called human. They had laws of war, restrictions, rules about what should never be done. Sevrak felt confusion. No dominant species limited itself. Only prey did that. The galaxy listed humans as insignificant, too divided, too emotional, too weak to matter. Yet something about the file disturbed him. Not their weapons, not their fleets. It was the history, a long record of internal wars, suffering, and survival. A species that had nearly destroyed itself many times, yet still stood. Sevrak archived the file and marked it as irrelevant. But a warning signal echoed in his mind. A species that creates rules for war is not gentle. It is afraid of what happens when those rules are gone. As Sevrak looked out into the dark, ruined galaxy, he did not know it yet. But the greatest mistake the universe would ever make was already written. He was underestimating humans. The strength they mistook for weakness remained on the drifting archive station for many cycles. The station floated near forgotten trade routes, far from power and safety. It was a place for the unwanted and the ignored. Refugees from broken worlds gathered there, species once proud, now reduced to survivors. They carried scars, missing limbs, and empty eyes. Sevrak recorded their stories. He catalogued suffering like data. Worlds burned by war, cultures erased by stronger neighbors. Again and again, the same pattern appeared. When faced with extinction, most species broke. They surrendered, scattered, or faded into silence. The galaxy called this natural order. Sevrak called it survival math. During one long rotation, the station received new data from the Galactic network, a report on rising tensions between major empires. Another large war was coming. Sevrak scanned the expected participants. Ancient powers with vast fleets, cold mines, and no limits. Then he saw a small note at the edge of the report. a minor species listed as observers only, humans. They were still considered weak, still not invited to important councils, still viewed as noise, not threat. Sivrak remembered the human file. He reopened it, this time reading deeper. Humans had no unified empire, no ancient ruling caste, no perfect logic system. Instead, their history was chaos, wars against each other, famine, disease, collapse. By galactic standards, they should have vanished long ago, but they had not. Sivrak noticed something strange. Each time humans suffered great loss, they changed. They adapted faster than expected, not always smarter, but tougher. They rebuilt cities after destruction. They mourned, then continued. Pain did not end them. Other species avoided pain. They designed systems to prevent it, to erase it. Humans did the opposite. They remembered pain. They carried it forward. This confused Sivrak deeply. Pain was inefficient, yet humans used it as fuel. On the archive station, Sivrak observed refugees closely. Those who survived longest were not the strongest or smartest. They were the ones who refused to stop moving. Many of them shared one trait with humans: stubborn survival. A disaster struck the station soon after. A reactor failure caused massive power loss. Life support failed in several sectors. Panic spread fast. Species fought over oxygen and food. Order collapsed. Sivrak expected chaos to consume everything. Instead, something unexpected happened. A small group of human traders were trapped on the station. They were not soldiers, not leaders, yet they organized evacuation routes, shared supplies, entered dangerous zones to restore systems. They lost several of their own, but they did not stop. Sivrak watched as humans carried the injured of other species. Even those who had insulted them before, even those who pushed them aside. This made no sense. Compassion during crisis was weakness. At least, that was what the galaxy taught. But the station survived, not because of advanced tech, but because humans refused to give up. When power was restored, the humans said little. They mourned quietly, then returned to their ships. Sivrak updated the human file. For the first time, he added a personal note. Humans endure. Humans adapt. Humans do not stop. At the same time, news spread across the stars. A major empire had targeted a human border colony, calling it a test, a demonstration. The galaxy barely noticed. Humans were expected to retreat or submit. Sivrak stared at the report. A cold feeling returned to his core. He remembered Karo's prime. He remembered being abandoned, and for the first time since losing his world, Sivrak wondered if the galaxy had made another mistake, because this time, his species being tested was one that had learned how to suffer and survive. The test that became a Warth attack on the human border colony was meant to be simple, a warning, not a conquest. A powerful empire wanted to remind the galaxy who controlled the stars. From the alien view, the target was small, one human world, lightly defended, far from Earth's core systems, a place chosen because its loss would not matter. The first strike came without declaration. Orbital fire tore through communication arrays. Defense platforms failed within minutes. Across the galaxy, analysts observed calmly. They had seen this before. A weak species faced with overwhelming force. Human ships were destroyed quickly. Ground cities burned. Evacuation routes collapsed. The reports labeled it a failure of human planning. Too slow to respond, too emotional to act with logic. On the surface of the colony, humans suffered badly. Civilians fled through fire and debris. Emergency shelters overflowed. Many died before help could arrive, and help did not arrive quickly. From Sivrak's position on the archive station, the data felt familiar, too familiar. He saw the same patterns he had recorded on Karo's prime. Powerless defenses, indifferent attackers, a galaxy that watched and waited. The invading empire expected surrender, a formal request for mercy, a signal of submission. It never came. Instead, human transmissions changed tone. No panic, no pleading, emergency. Channels filled with short, clear orders. Factories were repurposed within hours. Civilian ships were converted into supply carriers. Human commanders made decisions that made no sense to alien observers. They held positions they could not win. They sacrificed ships to delay the enemy by minutes, not victories. The galaxy mocked these actions, calling them desperate, calling them wasteful, but Sivrak noticed something others did not. Humans were buying time. As the invasion continued, the attackers pushed deeper, confident, unchallenged. Then small disruptions began. Supply convoys went missing. Navigation data became unreliable. Human resistance did not grow stronger, it grew smarter. Instead of meeting force with force, humans attacked systems, fuel depots, communication relays, repair stations. They struck, vanished, and struck again, never holding ground, never chasing glory. Losses on the human side were still high, too high. Entire settlements were abandoned. The galaxy declared the experiment a success. Humans were clearly losing. Their worlds were burning. But Sevrak saw something else in the numbers. Human morale did not collapse. It stabilized, even as casualty reports rose. Desertion did not. Surrender signals remained absent. Human media feeds, intercepted by the archive, showed grief, memorials, names of the dead, then production schedules, training updates, reinforcement routes. Humans mourned, then returned to work. The invading empire escalated, authorizing heavier weapons, more aggressive tactics. They believed one final push would break human resistance, end the conflict cleanly. As the order was transmitted, Sevrak felt a deep sense of unease. He had seen this moment before, the moment when an enemy mistakes endurance for collapse. Because the humans were not fighting to win quickly, they were fighting to survive long enough to change. And in the dark space between stars, as the war shifted from test to true conflict, Sevrak realized the galaxy was no longer observing a weak species. It was provoking one. When the galaxy laughs too soon across the galaxy, confidence grew. The invading empire released public projections. Human resistance would end within cycles. Analysts spoke with certainty. Humans lacked unity. They lacked power. They lacked the will to endure real war. The destruction of human colonies was broadcast as proof. Burning cities, broken fleets, refugees fleeing into deep space. To the great powers, this was routine. Another weak species learning its place. The Galactic Council did not intervene. Humans were not important enough. They were still classified as minor. Sevrak watched the feeds in silence. He had seen this confidence before. It always came before regret. Alien commanders mocked human behavior. They questioned why humans avoided certain targets, why they refused to destroy civilian centers completely. The galaxy believed this confirmed human weakness. They were too emotional, too moral, too soft. Why protect worlds already lost? Why hold back when extinction was near? Sevrak studied deeper layers of intercepted data, not the battle footage, the patterns beneath it. Human retreats were not random. They followed precise paths. Human losses, while heavy, followed strange limits. Entire fleets were sacrificed, but never all at once, never without purpose. Humans were not collapsing. They were compressing. On human worlds farther from the front lines, life changed fast. Factories stopped making consumer goods. Schools became training centers. Civilian networks turned into supply systems. The galaxy did not notice. It focused only on the front. Human media channels shifted in tone, not louder, calmer. Grief was still present. Faces of the dead were shown. Names were remembered. Then the broadcasts ended. No speeches, no threats, just silence. The invading empire saw this as victory. Silence meant fear. Fear meant surrender was close. They pushed harder. They removed their own restraints. Planetary bombardments increased. Civilian casualties rose sharply. Human evacuation ships were targeted openly. Even then, humans did not respond in kind. They continued to avoid certain weapons, certain tactics. The galaxy laughed. What kind of species limits itself while dying? Sevrak felt something twist inside him. A memory of Karo's prime, of rules abandoned by his own people when survival was at stake. He accessed restricted human historical data, records not often shared. He found something disturbing. Humans had once fought without limits. Long ago, the records were incomplete. Many details were sealed. Entire archives classified, even from allies. But the consequences were clear. Worlds poisoned. Generations scarred. A species nearly erased by its own hands. After that time, humans created rules. Not to protect enemies, to protect themselves. Sevrak understood then. Human restraint was not weakness. It was fear. Fear of becoming something worse than extinction. On the battlefield, the invading empire made a critical decision. They authorized total war. No restrictions. No protected zones. The order spread across their fleets. Target everything. End it now. As the command echoed through space, human signals changed. Not louder. Not desperate. They became precise. Cold. Several human fleets withdrew completely. Observers celebrated. They believed the humans were finally breaking. Sevrak did not celebrate. He felt dread, because he recognized the pattern. The moment before a species stops holding back, in a secure human transmission, briefly intercepted before encryption sealed it, Sevrak saw a single phrase repeated across multiple channels. Authorization pending. Ethical limits under review. The galaxy did not understand what it meant. Sevrak did, and for the first time since losing his world, he felt fear not for humans, but for everyone else, because the universe was about to learn why humans had chosen, for so long, not to do certain things. What humans choose not to do the moment restraint ended. The war changed its shape, not with explosions at first, but with silence. Human fleets did not charge forward. They disappeared, vanishing from known routes and predicted positions. Alien commanders celebrated. They believed the humans had finally broken, that fear had won. Then the supply failures began. Fuel reserves vanished from secure depots. Communication hubs went dark without damage. Navigation beacons broadcast false data. Entire alien task forces drifted blind in open space. This was not chaos, it was design. Humans no longer targeted ships alone. They targeted systems that kept fleets alive. Food chains, repair cycles, crew morale. Alien soldiers began to starve inside intact warships. Medical systems failed mysteriously. Command orders arrived late, or not at all. Panic spread through ranks that had never known it. The galaxy struggled to understand what was happening. Human weapons had not changed. Their numbers had not grown. But the battlefield itself had turned hostile. Sevrak studied the data in disbelief. Humans were fighting without seeking victory. They were seeking inevitability. Every move forced the enemy into harder choices, burn their own resources, or abandon them, advance blindly or stop completely. Human forces accepted losses without hesitation. Entire crews volunteered for missions with no return paths, not out of madness, but out of purpose. Humans did not fear death, they feared failure. The invading empire attempted to respond with greater force, mass bombardments, wide-area weapons. Human retaliation followed instantly, not against cities, not against civilians, but against foundations. Energy stars, destabilized planetary atmospheres, rendered unusable for centuries. Worlds were not destroyed, they were made irrelevant. The message was clear, survival was still possible. Dominance was not. Alien leadership began to fracture. Commanders argued, blame spread. Some demanded negotiations, others demanded extermination. Humans offered neither words nor threats, only pressure, relentless and patient. The war that was meant to be quick became unbearable, not because of destruction, but because of endurance. Human forces never rested, never paused, never retreated fully. They stayed just close enough to be felt. Sevrak saw something no analyst could quantify. Human pain had been refined into discipline, grief into focus. This was what humans had chosen not to do before. They had chosen not to fight this way, because once begun, it could not be clean. Entire alien systems surrendered without invasion. Fleets powered down voluntarily. Commanders requested ceasefires through neutral channels. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The humans did not celebrate. They did not broadcast triumph. They did not chase fleeing enemies. They simply stopped advancing. The invading empire collapsed inward. Economies failed. Alliances dissolved. Not from conquest, but from exhaustion. Sevrak understood then. Humans had not unleashed rage. They had unleashed control. This was not what they were best at. It was what they had feared becoming, as emergency ceasefire requests flooded the network. Human space went quiet again, but the silence was different now, heavy, watchful. The galaxy had pushed humanity past a line, and learned the cost was not extinction. It was survival on human terms. As Sevrak closed his report, one final update arrived. a formal galactic request for immediate talks with human leadership, not to negotiate victory, but to ask a single question: how much further were humans willing to go? And in that question, the galaxy finally understood the war was over, because humans had proven they never needed to win fast, they only needed to last. The species the galaxy will never provoke again. The war did not end with celebration. There were no victory parades, no great announcements across the stars. It ended with quiet agreement. The invading empire signed the ceasefire first, not from defeat in battle, but from collapse within. Their fleet still existed, their weapons still functioned, but their will was gone. Systems once proud now struggled to feed their own people. Trade routes lay abandoned, former allies kept their distance, afraid of being next. Across the galaxy, observers rewrote their models. Humanity no longer fit any known category. They were not the strongest, not the most advanced, not the most unified. Yet they had endured what should have broken them. Sevrak watched the aftermath unfold from the archive station. He saw human fleets withdraw slowly, methodically. They did not claim territory. They did not demand tribute. They repaired what they could, recovered their dead, then turned inward. Human worlds bore deep scars, cities in ruins, entire colonies lost forever. But humans rebuilt, not with anger, with resolve. They recorded every loss, every mistake, every line crossed. Galactic leaders expected demands, punishment, retribution. Instead, humans proposed limits, new laws of war, stricter than before. This confused the galaxy. Why restrict themselves again? After proving what they could do, Savak understood the answer. Humans feared themselves more than any enemy. They knew what pain could turn them into, and they refused to live as that forever. The Galactic Council changed its stance. Humanity was reclassified, no longer minor, no longer weak. They were labeled